You're recording. Hi, I'm Mel and I'm an aspiring sound designer and director. Yay, we did it's a parade!
It's a parade!
Although I unfortunately have not managed to direct anything throughout my time at uni, I have worked on 4 films, 2 of which I was a production designer, and the other 2, which were my major projects, I was the sound designer. Yay! Done! In one of Andrew Piddington's directing workshops, he showed some of the documentary score, a film music documentary. I was watching the documentary and I was like, oh my god, this is like so good, I'm gonna watch it when I get home. I was watching it, I was absolutely enthralled by it. I was like, I want to watch more. So I watched another one, it was really good, and a quote from that was David Lynch saying,
people always talk about the look of a film. They don't talk so much about the sound of a film. But it's equally important, sometimes more important.
I watched those just after I'd been put on sound design. And I was like, oh, I'll watch that now. And so I was just, I'd taken like a whole bunch of notes just from those 2 documentaries alone. Just learning as much as I could. Because I really wanted to get it right. I wanted to learn as much as possible so I didn't make that many mistakes or I wasn't completely in the dark. I think a lot of how I learned was advice from Isaac with the lav mics and Sol for post sound and learning how to use Premiere Pro, and just overall advice from Laura, and also setting up the boom mic by myself in the test shoot. I watched a few tutorials on YouTube on how to set up lav mics within the 3-week period before shoot, and the day before the shoot, Isaac and I sat down for maybe a few hours just figuring out how to set up the lav mics because we had a bit of trouble and we had to call Laura to help us out, but we got it in the end. I made sure to label the lav mics so I knew which channel each one was on, just so that everything was smooth sailing for the shoot and we didn't have to faff about. But unfortunately, on location, when we did use the lav mics, it didn't sound quite right with Adam's lav, so we unfortunately had to take a bit of time out of our day to make sure that they were once again set up correctly. But it didn't translate that well in post, so I had to fix the levels in post as well.
So can you share something valuable that you learn in the specialist workshops?
My love for sound design. I didn't expect it was just so random, and then that's when I got thrown into it. Thanks, Jules. No regrets though. I mean, the only reason I was put on sound was because I told Jules once in a meeting, oh yeah, like I'm really kind of into sound this year. Like, I don't know why, like just suddenly the workshops are like interesting me. I told him that once and he was like, oh, you're a sound designer now. Like, I don't know. Best decision he's ever made. No, I'm kidding. They were equally challenging with their own challenges. A lot of things went wrong on the set for Fractured, such as one of the university staff members coming in abruptly without any prior notice and walking across the closed set, and I didn't realise until it was too late, and I thought he had trod on one of the mics and broken them, which meant that we had to take the lav mics back and have them replaced with 2 mics on a stand, but there wasn't a cable for one of the mics, and so Sol and I thought that there wasn't any point in using one mic on a stand and a boom, especially when a lot of the shots were so wide that you'd be able to see the mic. So we thought that it was best to just take a back seat and let the cine crew sort out what they were doing. And it was so much back and forth that it just felt like we weren't really getting anywhere. As a result, this meant that we didn't have a lot to work with in post, so we had to record Foley and use those sounds instead. For How To, it was being the first film I worked on for sound design, just learning how to do everything on set, on location, and then making sure everything sounded the same because you could hear the humming of the lights, as well as the echo in the warehouse. But then there was the issue with the composer and getting the music we were looking for, which the composer couldn't provide. And because there wasn't anyone else to turn to, we had to cut out the music for the health and safety video and loop the piano for the contemporary parts. And it was a challenge to do all of this by myself, all in a weekend before the film was due. Thankfully, I think that having the experience on how to made it easier to deal with for Fractured. But I think with Fractured's post-sound it was easier, but we couldn't use Pro Tools because for some reason Pro Tools just wasn't working, so we had to scrap that idea and use something else and then export that. Again, it was just so much back and forth. So I think, yeah, both had its very difficult challenges.
I think I did the best I could with what I had to work with and within the amount of time I had. And I tried my hardest. But I think the one regret I have is not learning Pro Tools earlier, because I would have really loved to put Fractured in surround sound. I also really wish I was able to use the lav mics that I set up around the floor, because you could hear the direction of where the dancers were going, and I thought it would have sounded great in 5.1 or 7.1.
And then we just had to give them back, and then it just didn't work out.
You didn't get to use them in the end?
No.
Yeah, that kind of sucked.
Didn't even get to use the footsteps. The only footsteps we used for Fractured was the opening sequence where she walks in and me and Sol hid behind the curtain. And it sounded so good. It was like a really deep rumbling thump, 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 like a heartbeat, and it was like vibrating. I was like, that sounds so good. It's just a shame that it was so quiet in the film.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that I have to say to people before they watch it, you gotta either listen to it with speakers or in headphones. Otherwise you won't hear it. It won't be as prominent just listening to it on a regular screen.
I would say that in terms of sound design, I am quite proud of everything I've learned and within the amount of time I learned it.
I mean, I think that's pretty impressive to learn in that little time. And
Yeah,
you did a good job with it.
because like only a month before that, I would have been screaming, kicking, crying, saying I don't know, and I'll never know. But I know now. When I was doing production design, I'd look at the sound guys and be like, damn, I could never do that. That looks way too hard. And then when I was actually doing sound design, I was like, this seems way too easy. Like, am I doing something wrong? Like, I feel like it shouldn't be this easy. Because with How To, it's very dialogue heavy. The whole purpose of the film is you're supposed to listen to what she's saying.
And for never having recorded sound before for a film, I was very meticulous and fussy with making sure all the audio sounded crisp and clean and as audible as possible, just to save myself from having to fix too much in post. I didn't want to be the newbie where everyone just expected my sound to be bad and think, yeah, of course it's bad. They don't know what they're doing and they've never done it before. So I really wanted to prove them wrong and prove to myself that I can do it and prove it to the crew, because I didn't want to let my crew down, and most importantly, I didn't want to let myself down. But because Fractured was so lenient with sound, as there was no dialogue and we had more creative freedom with what to add and post, I felt it easier to work around. But there's a sort of blueprint with fictional drama where you've got to make sure the lavs are in the right place and you can't hear the clothes rustling and the lavs not falling off, or it's not too loud or too quiet or too scratchy. And then there's the continuity for the atmos, such as the wind, the lights humming and the car noises, on top of making sure all the dialogue is clear and the mic is in the right place. And that was extremely different for Fractured, because since we didn't record the footsteps on set, we had to record a lot of the sounds in Foley. However, those footsteps in Foley did not sync all the footsteps we recorded on set, because that was a take without cameras. But even so, the Foley I recorded sounded really bad.
So I was in the edit suite on Premiere Pro, taking the Foley of this is the first time I ever did post by myself.
Yeah.
I got the Foley clip and I cut the individual footsteps one by one, and I pieced them exactly as her foot hit the ground. It synced really well, because it just didn't sync if I just stuck it in. Like, I had to sync it completely manually by myself. I told you, it was so bad. I was like, nah, like, it syncs, but like, why doesn't it sound good? And just like, if it doesn't sound good, kill your darlings. Even doesn't matter how hard you worked on it, gotta scrap it, because otherwise
it won't work.
It just won't work and it won't be good.
Yeah. Were there any creative risks that you took?
Yeah, putting the lav mics on the floor. Laura, I'm blaming that one on you.
I knew it would be a risk, that's why I took so many precautions, and I stand firm when I say I think I did everything right. I told the crew and the cast where the lav mics were and that it was a closed set, and as long as the dancers stayed within a certain boundary, they wouldn't touch the mic. And the dancers did everything right, and so did the crew, and it sounded great. But then there was an unforeseen circumstance which meant we had to give the lav mics back. Thankfully, the lav mic was not broken. But it did also risk the sound in post as well, because we didn't have a lot to work with in post. However, I would say that was a good thing, because Sol and I felt that the less sound effects we had and the more specific and purposeful the soundscape was, the better and more impactful it sounded. I do still see myself directing in the future. It is ultimately my goal. I am currently working on a personal project, an experimental short film. And although it didn't get picked for one of the third-year major projects in my previous year, I would still love to make it because it is a film that means a lot to me. I can also see myself travelling and making films abroad in the big US of A. And it surprises me that I do see myself pursuing sound design more. I would love to work on more projects in the sound department. I have built a website with a showreel and my CV, and I am looking forward to the networking event on the 22nd of May. I've never been to a networking event before, but I hope to go to more, as well as go to film festivals, because I've also never been to film festivals before. So yeah, it's mainly just networking and getting out there and making connections. And also getting in contact with Film Buddy to see if there's anything we can discuss and they can help me with. I'd also get in contact with past and current students at university, because I have met a talented few who are open to working with me in the future.
Thanks for watching. Bye.